Välkommen till Waldekranz från Tickle.
Yeah, Paul. I'm actually going to speak in English. I'm not sure if there's anyone who speaks English here, but I made a presentation in English and it makes sense to all speak in English. Also, when you speak in English, everything you say sounds more epic. So if you're going to quote me or tweet anything from this presentation, I would like to sound very important. Being that we are at Conversion Jam, I would like to start by just giving all of you a short warning. I think you're in the wrong presentation room. You probably all know a lot more about this area than I do, which is always quite nervous to speak to a crowd that is so highly knowledgeable within an area. But when I sort of put down these few slides and sort of structure the content of them, I felt like, okay, I probably can't teach any high-level philosophies or techniques on how you do this or that, but maybe I can share a very practical approach to how we work with optimization, conversion, and growth, as we call it. So, being that we are an e-commerce platform, when we speak about conversion, there's a lot of different factors to it and a lot of different areas that sort of fall into conversion. And all of those sort of come back down to growth. So basically growth is our version of sales. The more we convert our traffic into subscribed users or stores or accounts, the better we're performing. So basically the agenda for today will be a short background on just how Tickle came to be and how we think about things, our philosophy for growth, a few examples of what we do, and then an overview of the tools that we use. But today will be a very practical, we'll be looking at the tools, basically, and how we use them. I'm not sure if all of you know. Do you know what Tickle is? No. Okay, that's a few of you know what Tickle is. It's an improvement from a year ago. Ticktail launched 6 months ago, a beta version of Ticktail. And basically, a few weeks ago, Wired magazine, they named us the Tumblr of e-commerce. And I like this description because I think what Ticktail is trying to do is that we're trying to create a whole new generation of online stores. We're an e-commerce platform that makes it simple to set up an online store. And we're trying to do so by making stores easier, freer, and more social. The way we're sort of attacking this problem or trying to solve it is that we focus not only on how do you start an online store, but what happens next. How do you get your first traffic? How do you get your first sales? So we kind of we reinvented what an interface looks like and what you can do with it. And we call it the Ticktail feed. So I'll show you a 1-minute video just to give you a short idea of what Ticktail is, and then we'll jump into the presentation. mentioned, we launched 6 months ago. We've been fortunate enough to have really good, fast growth. Last few months, we have more than 5,000 stores online on the platform already, growing about between 10 and 15% per week. I'm super proud about that. So let me talk a bit about growth then. So as I mentioned, growth is what we sort of, everything that comes down to how much our stores are selling, how many stores we have, how much they're engaged in the platform. We all sort of gather those terms into the word growth. And when I never started Ticktail because I was super great at optimization or A/B testing or anything like this. I wasn't even good at e-commerce. I come from a design background. Although we had done a few e-commerce pages before this, like Spotify.com, Rudebjer, and Pocket Shop. But I was working at an agency, and at an agency, you come about this far when you speak about, at least at my age, when you speak about product development. Like you have an assumption, you do tons of research, you look at competitors, you start wireframing, you do user tests, you put down the first few designs, you change those designs, redo them, and then you come up with a design which you develop, and then you kind of see the client sailing away and you don't really know what happens next. So the kind of picture I had of the world was like assumption, prototype, product. And that was actually one of the reasons I wanted to leave the agency I was working at to pursue my own company and build my own product, because I was wondering so much what happens next. And what happens next is basically conversion. Because we always knew that for Ticktail to win, to become the world's most used e-commerce platform, we would have to take every single decision along the way based on scale. So like, how can we make this decision push our metrics as much as possible? And the first step, sort of like figuring out what happens next, was simply to just start gathering and visualizing all the data in a way that was easy to understand, easy to extract, and easy to play around with it. Because if the data that you're working with takes time to extract, or it's complicated to interpret, then you will have like, it will be like reading a foreign book. Like you'll see all of this content, but it will mean nothing to you, and you won't understand what you're going to do with it. So our first step was just to visualize things. And we used a few tools in order to do so. But the first thing was like, okay, what do we want to interpret? So we have a few different parts of the product. We have the interface, the stores, and then third-party platforms like social networks, emails. I think this is the first step. Okay, what areas are we looking to improve and how, and so on. And then, so we're going to start by looking at the stores and the online interface and how we work with those. The second step, after you know which areas you're going to look at and to play around with, you want to figure out what you want to measure and why. And I guess the answer to this question is super simple. Like, how will we make money? And I guess that all the things that will ultimately lead you to earning profit or to increase the value of whatever you're working on is the things that you should ultimately measure and that you should let drive your product development. So for us it was user-based engagement and success, and we broke them down like this. So we would measure user base by registered accounts in online stores, and then stores with sales. So the funnel would be that someone comes into the platform, registers an account, goes online, and then ultimately starts selling things. We have engagement, which would be the time spent, weekly active users or monthly active users, for bigger platforms who have daily active users, but for us it makes more sense to go weekly. And then the success metrics, like, okay, are our stores attracting any traffic? Are they getting any sales? Are they increasing their spend time, or do they just have traffic that bounces right back? So we take these metrics for these specific 3 parts of the platform, and we would start visualizing. And one part of it, I think, is really important, is that if you're a data-driven company and KPIs matter in your business, then you want to visualize the data of your company, the key metrics, in a way that is visible for everyone working in your company at a daily basis. And you can do this in whatever way you want. We used a platform called DuckSport, which basically just takes key metrics and shows them in a very clear and understandable way. And I think this is one of the first steps. Like if your product is driven by numbers, then everyone in the organization, not just the numbers guy, like everyone in the organization needs to understand that these are the key metrics and understand how they are progressing, because that's really the only way to tell whether the company is in good health or not. Backsport also proves how good, like it's the modern coffee machine, sort of like starts conversation with office, and you'll see we have like what products we just sold and what people said about us on social media. But I think like data transparency is a really big part of it. The problem, however, with daily metrics is that you lose track of them really fast. So you'll have like, oh, today we grew our user base by 500 stores. And that will seem like a lot, it is a lot. But then so the day after, you only grow by 20 stores. And you can't really figure out, okay, how are we really performing from a bigger perspective. So I think it's important to divide how you measure data on a daily basis and on a weekly basis. We also have a weekly data KPI, which we go through with the entire office. Basically here we just take our key KPIs and we measure them in a cumulative way and a non-cumulative way to understand how our growth is progressing and how the growth rate is progressing. So these are two different values. One is like in total and one is for the week in comparison with last week. And I think what we do is we have weekly meetings, Monday meetings, much like any other company. Only ours are fun. And one of the points at all of these meetings will be that we will have time, we will sit down and we will go through the weekly change in numbers. And we will track those to a prediction of what those numbers are supposed to be, so that we know if we're on top of them or below them. And then we will, each week, so we do weekly sprints, so each week is planned and structured on the Monday. And then we will, if we are below metrics, then everyone needs to focus on getting us back on track for those metrics. Because once you start falling behind, there's no way of catching up, especially if you expect any kind of exponential growth. So there are usually numbers there, I just really understand that. Another thing which I think is really important is to understand that you will have all of the wrong assumptions in the beginning. So for TikTok, we thought that certain KPIs were the important ones to track, but later realized that we were actually measuring all the wrong numbers. So one of the things we did right from the beginning is that we made sure to track all events as data points and log them in the system. And what that basically means is that don't only measure the funnels you're looking at today. Measure all data points, all events, like when people come into a store, how they come into that store, when they check out, when they drop their cards. And even if you're not measuring them today, keep them, store them in some database so you can go back and evaluate funnels back in time or in retrospect. There is a lot of great tools to do this. One of them is Mixpanel, which we use. And I thought that I would just show a quick demo of what it looks like or how it works. So if we would set up a demo environment here and create a new funnel, I'll just show you this. We track all events in the platform. So we can go say, so every time someone goes into a store and they place something in the cart, and then go on to checkout, what does that look like? And then we'll get a funnel. For that funnel we can see trends, how has this changed over time, are we progressing in the right way or the wrong way? We can also drill this funnel down in terms of like, okay, what country did it come from? Or let's use something like operating system. So basically what Mixpanel does is that it allows you to get an oversight of things that happens today, but also to go back in time and see how did this funnel look like 4 months ago, even though we didn't track that specific funnel 4 months ago. So this is a really strong tool, which probably is the tool we use the most when we look into product development and try to understand what to develop next. I also think that it's important to make growth and numbers or data to be more specific, priority number one in companies. And not just make it everyone's priority, because this, I don't know the expression, but like everyone's responsibility is no one's responsibility. Something like this. So we made it Martin's responsibility. He's here, by the way, so he will be answering all of the questions afterwards. So make it like number one, put someone to work on just numbers and data crunching full time. I would say that there's this buzzword going around, which is a growth hacker. And it's basically an engineer who just focus on like how do we increase the numbers, how do we understand our data, how do we make it pop in some sense. And to me, for a technology-driven company, this could be an e-commerce site or a platform like ours, or really any company that is based on numbers or data. To have an engineer working full-time with growth is a must-have. Martin does a fantastic job. So if you look at other companies, this is Adam Nash, who was the head of product at LinkedIn. He had this talk a few weeks ago, and I decided to steal one of the slides, and where he talked about how they structure their product development. And at LinkedIn, what they do is that they say, when they're planning sprints, they will take 70% of the time and put it into metric movers. So these are product developmental changes that they believe will push their KPIs. And then 20% in customer requests, because you don't want to be an asshole. And then 10% to just making the service more fun and great to use. And I imagine in a lot of cases, like the lights would be 70%, metric movers 10%, and maybe customer requests the same. And I think it's really important to understand, like, you can spend a lot of time working with metric movers. So once all of the data that we had in the platform was structured in ways that we could understand and play around with, we just started somewhere. And I'm going to take you through a few examples on how we sort of played around with the data to improve the growth of our platform. And maybe this can inspire you in some way, or you might get some examples that you can just take straight off the bench. So like any business, we have funnels. A lot of funnels, in fact, but I imagine that this would be the most general overview of what our funnel looks like. So we get a lot of traffic into our store, so tickle.com. That traffic will ultimately lead to registrations, and if we're lucky, those registrations will become activated stores, real stores. And if those stores are lucky, that they will ultimately sell, which is the end goal for us, obviously, because that's what e-commerce is about. So we just looked at this, and after our first launch, we had a lot of sign-ups because we had been getting some hype, and we had the opportunity to present at the Nordic e-commerce summit. So we had tons of registered accounts, which is on the top of the page. So our first mission was, okay, in order to get this platform moving and to get some traction happening here, how can we move people from registration to activation? So you want to start by thinking about what kind of contact and what kind of dialogue do I have with our users at this certain point in the funnel. So between registration and activation, you really don't have much contact at all. Like, they've been into the website, they looked at everything, they signed up for an account, and then they went dark. They decided that it wasn't for them or it wasn't the right time. But you do have a lot of email addresses. So obviously, emails were where we started. And we did some of these like HTML, rich media newsletters with pictures and dandy headlines and all of this stuff. But what we really found useful and what really helped us was to work with personal letters. I don't know if you can see anything what's being said here. But basically what we did is that we connected my account to our news email service. And then we would send out personal emails to all of our stores where we would act as if I was actually sending the email myself. So we will go into a store saying, hey, we just realized that you are missing. I was into your store, I just realized that this is missing. So that could be like, oh, you don't have payment set up, or you don't have shipping set up. And then we would make a link to that place, and we would say, you should do like this in order to come over to the next step. And then we would also let people contact us if they needed more help. And as it turns out, this was super effective. And this was the sort of route that we started going down. Okay? Like, how can we continue this route of sort of personal contact and personal direct email? So rather than going the full-fledged design, let's just go basic text emails to people. So we started optimizing these emails over time. And we would try different things that were more like held back, or would be more like, okay, this is me, this is what I want from you, to more like expressive, like a lot of expression marks and like, oh, you rock, this is going so good. I mean, we learned a few things. One of the things we learned is that although two emails share the exact same content, which you of course already knew, they make huge differences when you start doing A/B tests. Like this email proved to be 50% more effective than the other one. The way we did this A/B test is that we would take 12% of the entire user group and send each variation to 6% each, and then 24 hours later we would send the rest of the batch to the rest of the users. So the left email in this case was 50% more effective, whereas the right email still had a higher open rate. And this was actually because of the first few sentences on the right email, because we didn't count on the fact that people use preview, where you see the two first email sentences, like Apple Mail, Gmail, iPhone, and so on. So we learned a few things, and I guess this is like super basic email stuff, but this is what we learned because we weren't so pro at it before. It's like one call to action, use whatever personal information you have, and really use it. Think about the first two sentences, and send it from a personal contact. I think it's funny, this thing about sending from personal contact and as a text email, is that it's actually the same thing that we just saw like Obama do for the president campaign. So I guess we're not the first ones to figure this out. But what can be important to remember here is that you want to vary the person you're sending it from in order to maintain a high efficiency. Switch contact. So we test a lot of things, and we try to test things in a very structured way, where we'll have a theory, we'll test that theory. Once that theory works, we'll start A/B testing that theory and breaking it down to split tests. Once we feel that we've reached a certain point of optimization, or we feel that they're efficient enough, we will put them in production. We won't spend any more time improving them. And then we will move them from our A/B testing tool to a tool in production. So for us, we use SendGrid, which now automates all of these emails. Two reasons, like don't lose your focus on just optimizing one thing. There are so many things which you can improve. And the second thing is very expensive to use third-party tools for everything. Another thing that we did really good is that we learned a lot from our users. So we would look at our top-tier users and see how they were using Pigtail. And we would try to make all of our users act in the same way. And this was actually a technique that we stole from how Twitter aligned their sign-up. So they would look at the top 20% of their users and then try to make the rest of the 80% to have that behavior. So one of the things that we did is that we saw that our top users would start promoting their stores before they were even online. And so what we did is actually we built this into the platform. So when you launch your first product in Pigtail, like you just upload the product, then we will do the first prompt for share in order to start building some kind of growth of virality. We A/B test a lot, not only emails, we also A/B test things in the service. One of the cool things I think we did is that we've been working a lot with the telephone batch. So all of our all Pigtail stores can look in whatever way you want, but they have one thing in common, and it's the cart, the checkout, and the Pigtail badge. So we've been working to make this badge more efficient. From the beginning, we had a 2.3% click-through, and then we started playing around with it a bit and did split tests. We added a call to action, so we would say, get your Pigtail, which increased the click-through by 15%. But at this point, we thought, no, this is too much, we don't want to exploit the stores in this kind of way. So we kind of took a step back and found the middle path. And I'm going to sort of summarize this presentation by just giving you an overview of the tools that we use. And maybe you use all of them already, or one of them is new to you and this presentation was worth your time. We use MailChimp to structure and A/B test email campaigns. Once we feel that we've optimized them enough, we will move them over to production, for which we use SendGrid. We use Mixpanel to log all events that come into the platform to be able to analyze them, like go back in time and analyze those events. We use Optimizer to do quick A/B testing. It's super expensive, but it works. And we use DuckScore to give everyone a transparent overview of what is happening on a daily basis and make everyone in the company data aware. But we then use also Google Analytics, of course, to analyze like Pigtail.com and the landing pages and so on. I'm 5 minutes ahead of time, so I'm going to stop by saying thanks a bunch, and I'll invite Martin to the stage, and maybe we can answer a few questions. Is that all right?
Thank you. Let's continue in English then. You said that you had, when your metrics is not doing that great just today, you put everybody, all hands on deck to improve that. Maybe you have a button in the office that says improve conversion, and then you just hit it, or what do you actually do?
Well, of course, it's depending on what metric it is that is lacking behind and so on. And sometimes everything isn't a thing that you can fix over a week. But there are some quick hacks. I mean, we have like newsletters that we can send out, which we're sort of like holding on, and we have a few like quick hacks we can do. But it's really just making sure that okay, we're running behind. Now we all need to focus on why we fell behind and how we can make up for that difference again. So if we don't fix it in a week, then everyone will be on it for the next week as well, and for ever long it takes before we start doing something else.
Cool. You talking about metric movers.
Yeah.
Don't you think metrics is numbers is boring?
Not since Martin joined. Well, numbers are only boring if you look at it in the wrong way. Like numbers are really user behavior, and that's really exciting.
So there's really real people
behind those numbers. Yeah.
Behind each number. You're talking about your personal message that you do it from a personal address. I haven't really got that idea. Who invented the no reply email?
Yeah.
It's like, here, I want to sell something to you, but by the way, bugger off. We don't want to talk to you. Just come.
Just buy it.
Yeah.
Immediately. Yeah.
So that's interesting how that even got to be. But is there a lot of extra work included in handling all the replies that you get from?
I mean,
adding your own personal email.
Our support could be so much better, and we're working on making it better all the time. We're still a really small team, so sometimes it gets the overhand of us. But so far, like, it's super great and it's very giving because like you learn so much from your users, and they come up with a lot of great ideas on how we can improve the product. And that's a really like if people reply to our emails, we think of it as a great thing, and then we just try to be really grateful for them taking the time to interact with it.
So commerce is between people.
Yeah, it is definitely. Yeah.
Do we have any questions from the audience? In Swedish or English?
Jag klarar svenska.
So how many are you working at TikTok now, and how many developers do you have?
We just became, or we will just become 9 people. We're 5 developers.
Do you have any off-site, offshore developers, or?
No, they're all in the office together. I think it's yeah. Our office is very offshore.
Okay. One more question? Sure.
Yeah.
I was wondering, do you write over in English, or do you write linguistic and maybe English?
So today, I guess that's one of the things that we actually know that we can be a lot better at. So today we're about equally big in 5 different markets, which Sweden is one, and we just don't have the resources to do localizations for 5 markets. So today our only and primary language is English, and then as we grow, we hope that we can support all of the language.
Okay.
That was applause for my answer.
Yeah. We will follow the your process closely.
Oh,
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.